Seriously, we're going to transition here, and I'm going to give you a pass. I know I was trying to hold your feet to the fire on that, but I'm going to give you a pass on this one because
Okay.
there's some ugliness that's written in the torch that I would totally understand if you're like, I don't really want to talk about that. But here's what was written.
Okay.
Jeff Jarrett had confronted Jerry last Tuesday about word he was getting about Jerry trying to oust him from power. Quote, Jerry sees this as a great time to steal power as Jeff is tending to his wife, says one wrestler who's usually a critic of Jeff and a supporter of Jerry. The feeling is that Jerry doesn't believe in the office staff that Jeff has assembled, and it's been one of his big talking points. Quote, TNA has an office staff filled with guys who should not be running an office, said one TNA source. For months, Jerry Jarrett has been dropping details into conversations with people about the changes he'd make if he gained power in TNA. So the rumors last week of him making a power play came as no surprise to many within TNA. If Jerry were to gain control and Jeff were to lose control, the feeling is that Dutch Mantel, Bob Ryder, Jeremy Borash, and Tim Welch would lose power. Listen, I realize that, you guys had mended things and everything ended on a great note. And unfortunately, your dad's no longer here. And this is an ugly spot and it's family business. So I get if you want to take a pass. But do you remember hearing rumors about this? Was this real? Did you confront him? I mean, this feels, for lack of a better word, ugly.
Oh, it was, and look, that's why a second ago I was the time frame of 05 because I think the worst part of our relationship was in 05. But Conrad, this again, I'm going to say, my old man got really sour in that the boy who cried wolf, that Panda was so unhappy, or not so unhappy. They were frustrated and this and that, and this and that, and which me and my father, the story, goes without saying, we'd put our own money up. We were in. We couldn't control the Screechy situation. We understood it. We went looking. They stepped up and willingly, and were super excited about it. And now at this point, they're, I guess, about 2 years into the investment. But we gave them opportunity to get completely out. We gave them an opportunity to get partially out. And when they just were kind of downright get the F out to our potential investor, I got it. They were in a position, maybe I didn't like the diplomacy they used, but I had zero control over that. Well, my old man really took offense to that. And I think that really soured him on, okay, this is, if they're going to treat this potential guy who, they're going to treat us this way. Anyway, it went bad. Well, that kind of domino effect started happening across the board. And so my father was not shy about voicing his opinion, whether it was with other talent, whether it was office, whether it was Dallas. And so he didn't mind knocking creative or talent or both, or why are we doing this, or one day he went nuts on the pyro. And I'm not going to say a lot of times when people say pyro, you just, what you see, you can also, they're called concussions and a bunch of different names, but the loud, it's like dynamite or fireworks, it's a big boom and it rattles those studios. It rattles the building. He hated those. I mean, he was, not a spring chicken. But anyway, there was a lot of things. I'm trying to make the point. There was a lot of things he was unhappy about. And me being in the position of where I was at the company, I don't know what my title was, CEO at that time or whatever. But I was talent, creative, and production. That was under me. And so it got uglier. But Conrad, yes, it was ugly. The short answer is, but it was ugly. And there would be times that, like, Dutch, and I don't want to put it on just a Dutch or a Dixie or a JB, like, your old man didn't have very kind things to say. Because it would make them feel uncomfortable. And my dad knew that. He knew that it would make them uncomfortable. So, yes, Conrad, there were some uneasy feelings going on professionally between us. Thank God for the last 7 years of his life. I'll say that.
You got past it in the last 7 years.
Way past. I mean, so far, we laughed about it.
It's, do you think it's one of those deals where wisdom comes with age, and maturity?
Well, you know, for any parent out there or expected parent, I know, nobody gives you a manual and says, hey, here's how you're supposed to be a father or a mother. Most of the time you kind of do how you were raised. In business, my father had never worked with his son. And matter of fact, his son had worked for him since the day he broke in, and it goes without saying, he, by design, and I'm so grateful that he did, he made it as hard on me, or he wanted to, and would tell me, I'm going to make it harder on you than anybody else in the company, because you ain't getting a handout. The old thing, born on third base or whatever it may be. He knew the gift I had by being the promoter's son. So he wanted to compensate. I think a lot of times he overcompensated, but I'm glad he did, and made it very tough. Well, here we are. I wanted to start the company. I said, Dad, and he knew this, and we chuckled about this later. He could have said, nope, I don't want to be a part of it. But he said, yeah, I'm in. I'm talking about day one conversations. The boat trip with Bob Ryder kind of gets spun into a fairy tale. But the reality is, came back from that, and I had to really put my mindset together and say, all right, do I want to do this? And if I'm going to go raise capital, the first question is going to be asking me, how much are you putting up of your own money? And so I decided, all right, I want to do this. And I went to my father and I said, do you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, I do. I mean, he thought about it. Yeah, I do. And I said, well, what's this split? I'll never forget this conversation. And I said, is it 50-50? But I know you don't like that. So it's going to be 51-49 one way or another. Or do you want to do 60-40? And he just said, what do you want to do? Because I've run my companies, I've done this, I've done that, all this. So what do you think? And I said, I don't know, but you have taught me a 50-50 relationship doesn't work in this industry and will never work, because you have to have the buck stop with one person. So 51-49 doesn't feel right to me, just because that 1% is important, but we're a father son. So that you're going to have 49% of the money up, but all this. And I said, I just kind of think 2/3, 1/3. And he looked at me and he said, that sounds really fair to me. I'm in. So we had that conversation. And so as we move on down the field, it was hard to kind of forget those days for him, I guess, that, okay, he signed up and Jeff is the boss. But as we went along, he didn't like a lot of the things. So it just became a butting of heads. And he was so much more than the Russo situation, or, the style of wrestling, the X division. He was just really on the entire thing. And he had never been put since he got in the business, because when he got in, broke in, ran shows, he was the promoter, he was his own boss. Then he got in, and next thing you know, he's kind of booking the show, and nobody knew it because Roy Welch kept it quiet, but he was still calling the shots. And then he became the booker, and then he broke away and he was his own company. So he had really never been in that role either. Now, granted, you just said wisdom, Conrad. It took both of us a long time, because look, I'd always worked for my father. I'd worked for Eric Bischoff. I'd worked for Vince McMahon. This was my first time truly being the buck stops with me. So throw all that into a high-strung, incredibly stressful, not just from a financial, layer in a sick wife for the second time, kids. My father had the health issue. For the first time, he had his heart issue. Conrad, when I'm just kind of putting all that together, going from weeklies to monthlies, and no wonder we went crazy. Therefore, it's just a lot of stress. But yeah, and you said wisdom. Yeah, it took us both a long time.
Let's talk about something else.